Good afternoon. I'm Tennie McCarty. I am the founder and primary owner of Shades of Hope Treatment Center in Buffalo Gap, Texas. Shades of Hope is an all-addiction treatment center with a primary focus on eating disorders. And I also want to give you what my claims are. A claim is what we have ourselves diagnosed. I've been a therapist for over 40 years. While dying from an eating disorder. And so until we can get an addiction or a disorder diagnosed and claim it, we don't treat it. So I want to give you my claims. And so my claim is that I am a recovering compulsive overeater and a bulimic. I'm a recovering adult child of an alcoholic. I'm a recovering debtor spender. I'm a recovering rager, and I'm an incest survivor. Now, there's much more to my life than my claims because I have taken my claims or the addictions and have treated them. I'm not weighted down by my addictions. I'm free today, free from the disease of addiction. And so addictions are diseases of the feelings. Addicts have either great big feelings or no feelings. So one of the things that we do at Shades, it's important that we have clients recognize their feelings. We talk about feelings. We have them identify their feelings several times a day. We have them to write their feelings. And we emphasize that feelings are not facts. And feelings won't kill us, but not feeling them well. So it's important for addicts to learn how to feel their feelings and not use over it, because it's usually the feelings, unresolved feelings, that will take addicts back to whatever their substance is. So we use 7 primary feeling words at Shades because nearly every feeling that we have will come under one of these feeling words. So I'm just going to briefly go over them and talk about feelings and the gifts of feelings that we can receive if we're willing to feel the feeling. So there's 3 columns that I'm going to work out of, and that is the feeling, and then the middle column is what we call, if you don't address the feeling, it will turn to the middle column. Or if you're carrying around feelings that's not yours. Sometimes we're raised in households where parents don't feel their own feelings or they overfeel, and children will begin to pick up, they'll literally pick up emotionally feelings of their parents, and that's what we call carried feelings. And so that's the difference between having our own adult feelings. And so a lot of the work that we do at Shades is looking and helping people look at what are their feelings and what they're carrying of someone else's. And so that's carried feelings. And then if we're willing to go through the feeling and feel it and get to the other side, there's a gift on the other side. So I'm just going to go through the list, but that gives you kind of a frame of reference of what I'm going to be sharing today. And I could do probably a 6-hour lecture on this, but I'm briefly going to go through the feelings. If you have any questions or comments or would like to know more information, just give us a call at Shades of Hope, and you can check us out on shadesofhope.com and get the number. And so let's talk about feelings. And so the first feeling that I want to talk about is anger. Anger is healthy. It's what we do with the anger that can become unhealthy. If we don't address anger, it can turn to rage. And rage is that buildup. Anger starts at the bottom and it goes up and up and up and up. And if we don't deal with it, we will blow up into rage. Or if we're carrying around someone else's anger. For instance, my dad was a rager. I picked up my dad's rage and I became a rager. I'm not proud of that, but that's what happened. I literally picked up the rage that he had and I began to carried it into my adult life. My mother was a drug addict and prescription drug addict and alcoholic. Mother had a lot of pain and a lot of self-pity. So I picked up mother's self-pity And I carried that self-pity through my adult life and felt sorry for myself a lot until I found help and began my recovery process. So if we're willing to have the anger and deal with it on a healthy way, what we get out of anger is strength, energy, and motivation. Have you ever been angry about something and got up and cleaned your house real fast? That's a healthy use of the anger. It's to help bring about change. So healthy anger gives us strength, energy, and motivation to bring about changes. Fear, it shades we call fear false evidence appearing real. A lot of times addicts are, we will exaggerate fear. We make up, it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Fear, false evidence. We can get a little bit of evidence about a situation and build us a case over it. And so if we don't deal with the fear, and all of these feelings are God-given, there's no bad or good feelings. Feelings just are. And fear is healthy. You know, God gave us fear for protection. The house is burning down, get out. There's a stop sign, stop. And so it's for protection, it's healthy. But when we don't address the fear, or if we are carrying around someone else's fear, my mother had fear of everything, and we were taught to fear everything on the outside world. But basically, we really needed to be fearful of what was going on in our home. But nevertheless, fear left unaddressed can turn to panic and paranoia. Panic is, oh my God, what's going to happen? Paranoia is, oh, they're out to get me. Somebody's coming, they're going to get me. I want to be found out. That is unhealthy fear. But the gift of fear is it gives us wisdom to know the difference. Healthy fear is wisdom. And then protection, wisdom to take care of ourselves. That's healthy fear. Pain, the kind of pain I'm talking about here is not physical pain, it's more emotional pain. Pain is real. You know, and our country is going through horrendous feelings, and pain is one of them. And left, if we're carried around pain of other generations, you take people who lived in the Holocaust. We have treated people 3-4 generations out of the Holocaust, and they're still carrying that pain of generations past. That's the kind of carried pain that we're talking about. And the pain, present day pain, if it's not addressed and faced, it turns to depression and then those feelings of hopelessness. Pain unaddressed turns to depression and feelings of hopelessness, like there's no way out. But the gift of pain is healing and growth. If we're willing to go through the pain of what's happening with the pandemic, if we're willing to go through it and feel the feelings of it and feel the pain of what we're losing, or fear of what we're not getting, fear of the future, if we're willing to go through the pain, what we're going to find is healing and growth. We're going to come out stronger than we were before we went into it. I believe, because I believe people, by and large, have good hearts and hard workers, particularly in this United States. And, you know, of course, we have a few old sore heads, but by and large, you know, we have good people who live in our country. And I think when we get through, if we'll go through this pain, we're going to come out on the other side, and we're going to be better than ever. And we're going to have healing and growth, maybe healing in areas that we needed to have healing in that we've never faced without this pandemic. And another feeling is loneliness, particularly for addicts. Deep in the heart of every addict is that feeling of loneliness. And then what addicts want to do is to isolate and savor themselves. It's a paradox. They're lonely, but they want to isolate. And when we isolate, we get into those feelings of helplessness. And if you're carrying that, keep referring back to my own childhood, that is one word that I would describe my childhood, is a lot of loneliness, because we lived almost like by ourselves. Because because of what was going on in our household. There was a lot of dysfunction. And so loneliness is a pain that can be in children, and they can grow up with that. And when they grow up with that, then they do want to tend to isolate. I kind of did a different turn in that I knew there was a bigger world and a better world than what I grew up in. And I became a seeker at an early age. So the gift of loneliness is if we will stop and feel the feeling of loneliness, but then reach into the God of our understanding, and then reach out to other people. God lives and works through people. So that's the way to end loneliness. Not so much to reach out and get people to be there for you, but reach out the helping hand for someone else. Take a meal to someone. Do something for someone else. Call a neighbor. Call a shut-in. Get out of ourselves into someone else. So it's the reaching in to the God of our understanding and reaching out to help someone else. And that gets us out of our loneliness. When we're lonely, it's like a person all wrapped up in themselves makes a poor package. And so when we're all just lonely and, have just surrounded and consumed by our own feelings, it's about getting out of ourselves and helping someone else. Shame, there's two different kinds of shame. And shame, there's toxic shame, and then there is healthy shame. Healthy shame is just knowing that we're all human beings. We all, I'll give you the best example that I can give, and it's kind of, I don't know, but we all do it. I'm going to tell you what healthy shame is. Have you ever been to a convention or somewhere where you were sharing a bathroom with several other people, maybe staying in a dorm room or something? You get up of a morning, you go into the bathroom and you do your business, and it smells. But you feel so much better, and your odor doesn't bother you. It's like you're even proud of yourself. Oh, look what I've done. I just feel so much better. And then you walk out of the bathroom and someone walks in behind you, and they'll say something like, "Oh my God, it stinks in here." Now, most of us have a little healthy shame. We get embarrassed by the smell of our own waste. Now I'm going to give you another little hint. If you got yourself so high up on a pedestal that you think your own waste doesn't stink, you better get yourself off that pedestal and come back down here with the rest of us and know that we all have, we're all fallible human beings. And one of the things is when we go to the bathroom, it stinks. So that's what healthy shame is. It's falling, out on the sidewalk or something. The first thing we think of is wonder who's watching. That's healthy shame because we get embarrassed by ourselves. Healthy shame. Toxic shame is given to us in childhood. Toxic shame comes out of any form of childhood abuse. And those 5 forms of childhood abuse are sexual abuse, and that's any form of sexual abuse, and that can be covert or overt sexual abuse. And then the physical abuse, of course, and then emotional abuse, and then intellectual abuse, and then spiritual abuse, religious abuse. If you want to know more about this, let me know and I can give you more information. But it's 5 forms of abuse. And when a perpetrator, particularly with the physical and the sexual abuse, but any form of abuse, when they put that abuse on a child, a perpetrator has no shame, and they put the shame on the child, and the child begins to carry, the child begins to feel like it's their fault for some form of abuse. And they can carry that shame into their adult life, and it's not even theirs to carry. That is toxic shame. And that's where good therapy must come in. And, talk therapy is good to get the story straight, but we must do the type of work that we do here to get into that core pain and to release that shame bond, and do shame and anger reduction work. So but left untreated, we get those feelings of worthlessness. We begin to carry shame around us and wear it like a warm cloak. But the gift of shame is having some humility, knowing that we're all like other people, and like I said earlier, that our waste stinks, and then having some humanity, knowing that we have a right to live on the face of the earth. Another feeling is guilt. Guilt is pretty clean cut. If you don't address guilt, though, or if you're carrying around guilt from the past, from your parents, and I did that. My dad did some things in my childhood, and his lawyers would make me get up on the stand and testify, and he was never served a day in the penitentiary, never was indicted by a grand jury, and a lot of it was because of my made-up testimony that his lawyers would have me to share with grand juries. Now, that was as a child, as a little kid, and what happened was I began to feel guilty. That was like my guilt. It was the guilt of the whole family, my mother and my dad, and the things that they did. But most of us have guilt of things that we've done. This is what I'm talking about in the present. And when we are loaded down with guilt, what happens is we get into the stage of immobility, particularly if we have a conscience, that what you do bothers you. You go to the penitentiary, there's many people in prisons that have no guilt. They have no guilt, and they have a diagnosis for that. But healthy guilt is we can make amends and then look at our value system. Sometimes we get guilty for anything we do. Maybe it's not even our guilt. Maybe it's granny's, we're living out of someone else's values, our grandmothers or the United States or our mothers or our dads. We have to look at what our values are. And if we live outside our value system, you're going to get guilty over it. And so you have to look at, for instance, I'll give you a prime example. I treated a woman many years ago that her husband was a minister of a very highly esteemed Christian church in the United States. I'm not going to tell you where, but they were very well known. And she started slipping around drinking, and she became a bad alcoholic. And her guilt nearly killed her because it was not in her value system to drink. That's what I'm talking about. And we must, look at our value system, because when we live outside our value system and we do something, the guilt is going to kill us. So the last one is joy. Now, people ask me, well, why don't you have more positive feelings on that list? Joy covers them all. The definition of joy is the enthusiasm of God. And we can have joy in simple things. It doesn't have to be always a ta-da, it's simple things. My little friend Misty and I just took a simple walk around my garden a while ago and looked at my flowers. I do that every morning, and I was a little late this morning looking at them, and they were waiting on me. I get so much joy of looking at my flowers and seeing what's blooming and what's not blooming, and how's the tomato plant doing. And it's joy in small things, watching the cats, or being concerned if they're not here. But joy is the enthusiasm of God, joy. But now, joy taken to the extreme can turn to hysteria. Like, for instance, if you were raised in a household where maybe there was abuse, maybe there was a lot of untreated alcoholism, and as a child, you had to be the one that rose above that, and that you had to be the one that made people laugh or made people feel good. That's a role that kids can play in dysfunctional families. And so if you're a kid that did that, what will happen is you take that joy and that becomes your identity. It's called hysteria. Have you ever been around Pollyanna positives, where they're just hugging people all the time and they're happy all the time? I'll tell you, they'll just wear you out. It's like, calm down, just come down here and be with the rest of us, That is exaggerated joy. And when people do that, there's usually something hidden underneath. And if their wall and they usually have a wall. We all have a certain wall of defenses that we use. And, you know, as therapists, it's not our place to take those walls down for people, because it's just been helpful for them to get through some bad times. But you're people that have so much joy that is just nothing ever bothers them. If you can ever find what that defense is and get the wall down, what you're going to find behind that is unresolved pain and anger. And when they work through that, they can level out and enjoy and know that joy is a feeling, and it's okay to have other feelings along with it. So what the gift of joy is hope, healing, and spirituality. And if you'll notice, the gift of pain is healing and growth. So what we call here pain and joy is pain-filled joy and joy-filled pain. What that means is, as you begin to look at yourself and go through all the different feelings, it can be painful, but what you're going to find on the other side is that freedom and a lot of joy. I hope this has been helpful to you, and if you want to know more about our programs, we have my daughter and I do a monthly intensive, and this is what we focus on, is unresolved feelings and of the past and abuse of the past and in the present. It doesn't always have to be in the but if you need us, if you want any more information, give us a call at Shades of Hope, and have a great day. Thank you.